ahead and start recording our session so we can post it to the Google Plus community. Okay, I'm going to apologize right now for coughing. I've had a cough for a few weeks and it's on the tail end, almost gone. Well,
do you have me on there now?
I do. I see you in there now. I see Darby. Yep. I think I got everybody in there now, at least of who I can see. All right. Well, we will go ahead and get started. It's just a little after 3:30. So I hope you guys, thanks for joining me. I know this is a crazy time of year, but I wanted to get one more Zoom session in for this reporting period before we head into the next one. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. Okay. Yeah. My favorite is as y'all were logging in, I could see everybody's like working, cutting, gluing, sorting, all those kind of things, getting ready for what's coming up. Oh, there's some more friends. Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm scanning through to see who else here. All right. Well, if you haven't yet and you just joined us, don't forget to open your chat, sign in with your name and your campus so that I have a record of who got to attend today. And you should see on your screen, excuse me, kind of a purple wintry screen. The title of this session is Interactive Writing and Authentic Print. And we are going to just do a little talking. We're on the schedule today from 3:30 to 4:30, but if we end earlier, we will wrap it up earlier. If you have any questions about things coming up, jot those down as we go, because I'd love to leave some time at the end of the time where you guys can ask questions, whether it's something that's coming up on Scope and Sequence or just a burning question in your brain. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So to start today, we're going to play a game. So you're going to need your cell phones. If you don't have them, I'll give you a minute to go grab them. You're going to need to, on your cell phone, pull up your browser and go to menti.com. So I'll give everybody a minute to do that. And it's going to ask you for a code. And I'll show that in just a minute. I want to kind of give everybody a chance to, get to where we're going. All right, let me move over to this and do this. All right, so there's your address where you need to go. Here is your code to enter as soon as you get there. So for those of you who are competitive, I played a game with Kinder yesterday, and I found out quickly who was competitive. Super fast fingers. These are not hard questions. Do not feel scared in any way. I have every confidence. I was just trying to think of a fun way for us to get started.
My phone may not work in here. I don't get very good reception.
Okay. Well, you will be able to see all. I won't get to tally your points. You can always respond in the chat to the question if you want to. It won't automatically tally your points, though, but you're welcome to. It's mostly all just true, false. So pretty quick questions. All right. Looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Most of you logged in. Is anyone still? Just speak up if you're still trying to log in. Okay. Keep going, Moss. Or Miss Bowen at Moss. I'll call you actually by your name instead of your campus. That would be nice, right? All right. I'm going to scan through y'all real fast. Throw a hand up if you're still trying to log in.
I'm good. I'm logged in.
All right. I still got a few of you trying to get logged in there. I know sometimes depending on where you're at in your particular building, it can be a little sketchy. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. I'm going to start the first question. Here we go. Authentic print includes posters from Mardel and teacher-created anchor charts laminated and used from year to year. True or false? Everyone has voted. And the answer actually would be false. Okay, so I chose authentic print and shared writing because this was one area, I'm not going to say every room, but kind of consistently, we really didn't have a lot of teachers who scored out of 3 in either of these categories on the environment checklist. And so we're just going to do some brief discussion today and hopefully share some ideas of how you include authentic print and use interactive writing to do that in your classroom. So while Mardell has some awesome posters that can be really useful, best practice really shows that students use charts and anchor charts and things that they have had some investment in and had some part in creating. Now, that can't mean that you don't have large control of the pen and you're actually the one putting most of the information on the chart, but they should have some piece in the creation. Now, I may have caught you there with that anchor charts laminated from year to year. One thing, if you create it and then you go laminate it, one thing to caution you about lamination, a lot of times the glare from the lights on your lamination can make it hard for the kids to use. But if you're laminating it and then recycling it and starting with new posters the next year, that really gives your kids a chance to have part of the creation rather than just pulling it out and it being something that you created last year. All right, next question. If I can figure out, how do we go? Click. Oh, click the leaderboard. No, continue. There we go. All right, here's, whoops, that's the leaderboard. Next question, here we go. Shared writing is a process where the teacher creates and writes the text in front of the students. Be careful with this one. Look at what it says. True or false? Almost out of time.
It's giving 4,166 seconds to answer.
I know. Okay, so this one was a little tricky. I didn't intentionally do that, but after I wrote the question, I thought, that looks kind of tricky. So shared writing should be a completely shared experience. While generally in shared writing, the teacher does control the pen, the part the kids should have a part of is in that creation. So while you might be guiding and kind of having in mind what you want to write, the kids should at least feel like or have a chance to have some input on that. Whether it's, okay, let's make a chart about how to build our worm habitat. What do you guys think we need to do first? And if they're having that ability to collaborate and give you their ideas, then it's truly a shared writing experience as opposed to the teacher. So today we're going to build our worm habitat and you're up there and you write, first, we're going to do this. Second, we're going to do this. And you're telling them everything. They really don't have any involvement in the creation of that. So that's really why I marked this one false, was because the way I stated it, my intent was that the teacher was doing all the creation. She was planning. She was thinking. She's also writing the text. All right, let's keep going. Who's ahead? Danielle, Darby, right behind. I like your little emojis. All right, here we go. Next question. Interactive writing is a process in which the teacher and the student create text together, sharing the pen and the process. Dun, dun, dun. Yay. True. And this one is kind of the opposite. So here in this case, interactive writing, they're going to share, this is the big difference here, the pen. In shared writing, they would share the process, but they don't necessarily come up and are involved in any of the physical writing of the text on the paper. Interactive writing, they're doing both. All right, let's keep going. Dun, dun, dun. Darby, you haven't pulled ahead yet.
Oh man, I'm gonna get it.
Okay, here we go. Oh, I see some people moving around though there. Let's go. Next question. Sharing the pen means students write every word or letter with the direction of the teacher. Okay, Kahoot plays really loud music when I play it on Kahoot. The silence is kind of awkward for me, I'm not going to lie.
can turn some music on if you want.
No, that's okay. Thanks, though. I can make it. Awesome. We all got that one. Okay. So false. When you're sharing the pen, and of course, with your little writers, if they were to write every word or every letter, you would be there for forever and often not generate much text at all. So the idea would be that you're sharing the pen, but they're not going to have to come up and write everything. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along today. All right. These are our final results. So Danielle, you managed to stay on top the whole time. I have no prize other than you can pat yourself on the back. Yay. I'm not super competitive, so I'm always like slow to answer and everything. So, okay, so I just wanted to kind of get us started that way by doing a little thinking around it. What I wanted to pull up real quick are the indicators from the classroom environment checklist. So this is the one for shared and interactive writing. And so the level 3, there's an abundance of authentic print that is, sorry, this should say authentic print, not shared and interactive. My bad. So this is actually the criteria for authentic print. I apologize for the labels. So to be at a 3, there's an abundance of authentic print that is accessible to children in the classroom. So I know a few things that we noticed, and I'm sorry I don't have specific campuses. I wouldn't want to call anybody out anyways. But overall, we did see some authentic print, but a lot of times it wasn't super accessible to children. Sometimes it was hung really high or behind things. We saw some out in the hall. So not only should there be an abundance of authentic print, but it should be accessible to the kids. Level 2 was where I would say the majority of us were. There's a variety of print in the classroom, but some of the print appears not educational or inauthentic because it is generic commercial print rather than teacher or child made. And there's still a good balance of this going on, but probably we saw more inauthentic than we did authentic print. I appreciate that this also gives us some examples, and we're going to dig into examples of authentic print. But if you look down here, common examples, right here they highlight shared. Let me get my pointer, sorry. Shared or interactive writing. Why do you think that would be listed as authentic print? Somebody share out. Or type. Why would shared or interactive writing be considered authentic print?
Because it's what the students created.
Yeah, they've had an actual piece or part of that experience. As I looked at some of the others, read aloud pocket chart, list, title, author, illustrator, key vocabulary. I know one of the other areas on here was read aloud supports, and what they actually mean by that are things like a poem or a piece of text you've read that's been written on sentence strips, and then it has either like picture icons or things that can be helped to retell the story. And I thought that was interesting. That's going to be considered authentic print, again, for the same reason of shared interactive, because they had some piece in reading it, even if they didn't write it. Environmental print, we did see some of this throughout some of your classrooms. A huge piece to link to their worlds and make authentic would be bringing in environmental print. I know I visited a couple of classrooms today who included this on their word and letter walls that they're putting down low. All right, let's keep going. So this would actually be the indicators for shared and interactive writing. So at a level 2, there are some shared or interactive writing samples displayed, such as daily news, our morning message kind of thing, but there are only 1 or 2 displays of shared writing. Now, I know this is one that I thought about when we come into the classroom. Whoops. We're going off what we can see. So if you had something like some books you've created or something like that that were over in the center and they were like up underneath something, you may have not understandably received credit. So you may want to keep those out like on a display where you can see those, especially around BOY and EOY. Let's look at a level 3 though. To be at a level 3, there are 3 or more. So 3 is not a lot, but I would say majority, we did not see 3 or more pieces of text that it looked like the students had some kind of creation in. I will say we saw a lot more shared than we did interactive. And I'm sure as you move through the year, you're going to have more interactive than shared. So there are 3 or more shared or interactive writing samples displayed, and they appear recent. So that's another piece of that indicator is, are the things hung in your classroom things that have been up all year? Or are you constantly creating text with your children so that you've got to be kind of changing things out? They again give some examples, daily news from today versus daily news from yesterday, or they appear to represent writing across various activity contexts, daily news, dictations from class science activity, and then down here they give some examples. We're not going to read through all the examples right now because I'm excited to hear from some of you what you're doing in your classroom. Okay, so over our time together, I want to hear from you as I'm going to share too. What is interactive versus shared? We've talked a little bit about that already. What is involved in an interactive writing lesson, and how do we utilize this practice in pre-K? So actually, let's look at this. I'm going to share, I will give you the title of this book. It's called Interactive Writing Across Grades, and it's a pre-K through 5 book. But I want you I'm going to leave this up on the screen. I'm not going to read it out loud. I'd love for you to read this to yourself and respond in the comments. What stands out in this definition of interactive writing to you? So go ahead and read and just respond in the comments. What stands out and what are your thoughts about this definition? Seeing a few of you have replied. Let's text together. Okay. Keep replying if you are. I'm going to go ahead and ask a couple of questions. Angela Moreland, why did you respond with writing process? Why did that stand out to you?
Well, just as, you're thinking aloud with them and telling them, and rereading and, just going through that whole process of, what are we going to write about? Mm-hmm. And then writing about it and then going back and looking and see, did we write what we wanted to write, and just model that thing.
Yeah.
That part, that writing process. Right.
And it's definitely not something we're not expecting by any means your little friends to already have a grasp of that or to be able to do that independently. But starting that foundation of modeling that process and letting them know that first I have to think about what I'm going to write, and then I decide to write it, and then I go back and look at it again. I just think as younger grade teachers, especially pre-K, we wouldn't think that we're teaching the writing process, but you really are. Meaningful text. I love that a lot of you clued in on that. I think that's my favorite part of the definition. Other than one thing that stood out to me the first time I read actually not the first time. Sorry, go back. This is what I want. Here we go. Was this word right here, dynamic. A lot of times I hear people talk about guided reading being a dynamic process. And in that case, they're meaning that it's always kind of changing. It's not, your groups don't always stay the same. They're dynamic. One group may be a certain 4 kids for a little while, and then it's 3 different other kids, and those groups are always changing based on the kids' development. And that's the same thing with this process of interactive writing, that one lesson's not going to look exactly like the other, and it's going to adapt to their needs and change as it goes. I don't know, that part just stood out to me the second time I read it. Meaningful text, like I said, is probably my favorite part of it. And then we talked about writing process, but these authors, they said writing process, and then they went further to say together they plan, compose, and review the text in a variety of genre. What do you think? Actually, let's keep going. I have a question, but I'm going to save it for a little bit. Okay. So as I thought about this idea of interactive writing, I think it's something that we're all doing in some form or fashion, but I thought it would be helpful to look at the pieces that probably should happen somewhere in a time period or a lesson of interactive writing. So you can't click on it right now, but when I share this slideshow, this right here is a link, and you'll be able to click, and it will take you to a PDF. Let's zoom in here a little bit. So this is from this same book that I shared the definition from. And this very first thing is they consider the most important piece of anything you're going to write together is this idea of a shared experience of some kind. The writing is motivated and informed by a shared classroom experience. So would you guys share in the comments or even speak out loud, what is a shared experience that you guys have taken and then written together about it in some way? Share a shared experience that you've had with your kiddos, and then you've written or made some kind of text about that experience.
Right now, we're doing about going to the library together.
Yeah.
And so we're actually, we started today, and we were brainstorming on what do we all do together as a class, because some of our friends stay to eat lunch and some of our friends go home right away. So we wanted to come up with something that we all do together right when we're with each other. So we picked going to the library as our topic.
Was that Danielle?
Yes.
Okay, I thought I recognized your voice. I can't see you are you on camera or are you doing by phone?
I'm doing it by the phone.
I thought so. You sounded a little different, so thank you for joining.
Yeah.
What I was going to ask was, so you're writing about going to the library. Are you writing it together like as a book or a poster, or what type of text will it look like when it's done?
So we're doing it as a book.
Okay. And how are you kind of dividing that process out? Because I'm guessing you're not writing the whole book in one session. So kind of tell us how you're kind of doing that throughout the week. I know.
So today, like I said, we talked about it yesterday about, we're going to start writing a book, or we wanted to come up with stuff that we wanted to do together. And we talked about doing like a big class book or little table books, like each table do their own little book. And so we decided to do a class book all together. And so then we kind of talked about like, these are the steps that when you go to write a book. So today was our brainstorming step of, okay, now we know we're going to write a book. What are we going to write the book about? And so we kind of already gave out jobs to people. So we're going to have a couple of illustrators. We'll have a couple of authors. And so we'll have friends who get the materials together. And so we kind of started dividing it out that way.
Awesome. I like the idea of the jobs and including illustrations that not just the teacher has made can be really valuable depending on what you're doing with the text. If it's not a chart, especially if it's a book like that. It sounds awesome. Daniel, thanks for sharing. So Patricia, you wrote, I think that's you, Black, about writing letters to Santa. Are you there, Miss Black?
Yes, I did.
There you are. Hey, so share with us how you did that as an interactive writing experience, and then did they take that and do that independently, or what did that kind of look like?
So I started doing individual letters, and then after that, we're still in the process of making it into a book. So I want to make like a big one of the individual ones and put them all together. So kind of like the cover will be like, Dear Santa, and then opening like so-and-so wants, this, and then so-and-so like this, and like for every page will be what they did in their individual one.
Okay, so you kind of went a little opposite direction than what normally probably would have been thought of, but I kind of like it. So you've given them some time to write their letters to Santa, and then you're going to take those and the text that you create for each page of your book will be the child's name and then wants a, so you can create those two high frequency words there and then add that. That'll be in each book. I bet applesauce, that looks like fun. Great experience to write about. So feel free to scan through. You can see some of those going to the computer lab, a recipe book. Darby, share about your recipe book. What are you doing with
We
that?
haven't started that, but we're about to start it next week. So after we read the one with the applesauce and the red hen, we made pizzas in the class, and we talked about the recipe process and the ingredients. And so we told all the kids to go home and talk to their parents about how they make a certain dish, and then they're going to come and tell us how to make it. And we're going to make it into a book to give to the parents for Christmas.
Okay. So you've kind of even extended that. So you had the shared experience of making other and following other recipes to make something. And then now you'll take that experience to write kind of your own recipes. So just as you think through this idea of writing together, you're going to get the most engagement from your kids if it's something that they've all experienced. So just that's something to really think about, especially with our youngest writers. If whatever we're going to try to write together, and if they're going to come up and have some ownership of that pen, if you're writing about something that they don't have a connection to, like I know somebody said going to the beach, so that's one that's going to depend a lot on your class. Like maybe the whole class has been to the beach, and so it'd be a great topic for you to all write about. I know if I can think of the last classroom I was in, that particular group, I had several kids who hadn't traveled outside of the city of Mesquite. And so a beach, not even to a lake or anything. And so for my class, that wouldn't be a good option. If I had tried to use it, I would have some students less likely to be engaged because they couldn't contribute very much. So just something important to think about is when you choose your topic, your thing you're going to write about, is it an experience that all of them can contribute to the text? The next thing in the cycle, just like the writing cycle, is this idea of pre-writing. And our little pre-K and kindergarten friends, while they may not be drawing a plan or a graphic organizer, definitely just that thinking through and numbering off, well, what did we do first and what did we do next? That's the pre-writing purpose for them, and they should be a part of that with you. Then obviously composing the text. There's just some information about, remember, this is that idea of sharing the pen, which is what it takes it down into. So I'm going to stop here for a second. I'd love to hear from you guys when you're using interactive writing and you're trying to build a piece of text. How do you manage the kids on the carpet who aren't getting to write? What are some things that you have to keep in mind when you have one little friend coming up to write their letter or to write a word from the word wall or something like that? So share with us. You're welcome to type in the comments, or I'd love you to share out loud what's just something that you do to kind of keep your kids engaged and not rolling on the floor or, playing with something that they shouldn't be while you're trying to build text together. What's something you do to kind of help manage that? So sorry for my cough. I have water over here. Okay.
Yeah, setting the expectations at the beginning of the
Mhm.
year, doing that stuff. Rewards. I know my kids get party points that we give them, so.
Okay. Yeah, so involving whatever that reward system is that you use in your classroom for positive behavior and participation. Yeah, Morales, I was wondering if anybody did this, using whiteboards so that they can draw or write the same letter
Yes.
while they're down on the carpet. It's a great idea. Sometimes I even had, if I knew we were just going to compose a small piece of the text that day or something like that, and I was short on time, I would even have my kids finger write in the carpet on my rug to try to, and I've had different rugs throughout the years. Some, they could actually move their finger through the carpet and you could actually see kind of the pattern in the rug. Saying the letters the student writes. Even skywriting, especially if it's just a letter at a time, having them write that same letter. Any way you can keep them involved. I think something that comes to mind with this part for me is always my pacing and really making sure that I keep it moving and don't spend too much time with that kiddo. All right, so we're going to get the text on the paper. The next piece of a cycle is, of course, that process of going back and reviewing. They just say the class briefly revisits the written piece of text to reinforce particular concepts learned. I like the example of this in the book. I was actually just reviewing a little earlier. It was a kindergarten class. No, I'm sorry, a pre-K class. And they were trying to write about their trip to the zoo. And they said, we saw giraffes. And so the teacher, of course, didn't really have them write the G, because the sound the G makes in giraffe is something that they are not, so she didn't even bother with that. She didn't have anyone write until they came to the F, because they had recently studied F, and they had, I think, 1 or 2 little kids who either had it in their first name or last name or something like that. And so being intentional about the letters that you choose for them to come up and write is important. I think this whole section, thinking about composing and sharing the pen and then reviewing, would be a really important part to think through of planning. And then, of course, they actually include extending how could we take this piece of writing. The completed writing piece becomes an instructional tool that supports and advances students' literacy development. It can be extended in multiple ways. So they just list some ideas, and you'll have access to this sheet here of things you could do with that text after you've already generated it. Obviously, if you're making a book like Danielle was suggesting, that's hopefully going to go over into your library station and hopefully get very well loved on and may not make it to the end of the year. Sharing the piece, I know often we would trade books that we had written with other teachers. So if we had written one week about, I can remember one that we created with some first graders, about some animals that we were studying, and the class across the hall was studying something different. And so we each made a book and we traded books. So there's some various ways. So you'll have access to this. I have a sheet and I could not find it today, so I feel like I'm gonna have to recreate it. I waited till too late to try to find it, but I have made a table that has each of these pieces in here and like a brief description in the box so that you could actually plan your interactive writing lesson over here. I know it's probably not a practice you would do every week to this extent, but I think if you kind of on some kind of rotating basis or something were more intentional about your planning with interactive writing, you might be able to have some different results. Okay, back to our slideshow here. Not that slide. This one. Here's where we are. All right, so what can we do with this in pre-K? I want to share real quick. I wish I was friends with all of y'all, but just one teacher that I am friends with on Facebook is Miss McMillan over at Beasley. And she is a pre-K PPCD blend class. And I wanted to share a couple of pictures that I noticed on her feed previously. That's not actually the best one. Let me get out here. If you don't follow Miss McMillan, she's pretty awesome. I would recommend. Her page for her class is McMillan Monsters. If you guys have one for your class, please find me Facebook and share it with me, or tweet or email me the name of it. I would love to follow. Of course, here's a common one I know I've seen in a lot of your classrooms where you've set up the model and then they're able to come up. I know a lot of our curricular resources have had the interactive charts. Hopefully, as you move through the year, you're moving away from just a chart to more authentic pieces like a book, or creating your own poster about your worms, or some kind of informational piece of text that would be a little more like what they would see in the real world versus a list of I can sentences. But of course, that's where we start. Okay, let me scroll back up and see if I can find one that she had. I had it located earlier, and when I got out, it moved on me. So here is one where they're just adding just the words to the beginning of the sentence. What do we get from farm animals? So thinking about your day, I'd love to hear I'll keep scrolling for pictures, but I would love to hear from you guys. I know I'll answer the worm questions here in a little bit, I promise. Kind of how does interactive writing fit in your day? Is it part of your morning circle time? Does it tie most often to your social studies and science? So just kind of respond on where does it fit in your day, or how do you tie it in? I'll give you a second to do that while I'm looking for a couple of the particular pictures I wanted to share with you.
I guess you can tell me if this
Yeah, just speak up.
the interactive writing, but
Uh-huh.
every morning I, draw a student's name. We write the word wall words out. They get to choose one of the word wall words, and then they tell me a sentence, and then we write that sentence together.
For sure. They've had help in creating it.
Mhm.
And they're sharing the pen. And so definitely one form of interactive writing.
So we do that every morning, but
Okay.
that's not something that we keep throughout the year or
Uh-huh.
play because we erase it.
Right. And you've already shared other ways that you include that. And you may have noticed I can't find the particular picture. Well, here's one. This isn't the one I was thinking of, but come on. So here is where around Thanksgiving they were doing things they were thankful for. And you can see she's got some friends who are ready to come up. And my cousin, and then they wrote their name. Whereas the students that she knew, obviously with this little friend, she recorded their thinking for them. So it allows you to really differentiate for your kids and let them come up if you feel like they're ready to where they can add more. Okay, I'm going to move on from that because I can't find the exact one I was wanting to share, but I do want to go back. Excuse me, goodness. I pulled a couple of places, and I've been trying to do this with the overview. I've been trying to include this year for you some options. So when you think about writing in pre-K, because you have a half day, I know that it would be a lot to squeeze in both a solid interactive writing lesson and writer's workshop or independent writing time. And so the way I've tried to suggest is that you've got 2 days where you really do something that's more interactive, and then 2 to 3 days, depending on how long your week is, where you're doing more of a writing workshop where you're teaching a small mini lesson that could include something interactive or shared, and then they go off and try something on their own. But I want to make sure, if you hadn't noticed, that I'm trying to give you some options of things that might work. Like this one, I think, is what's in week 16, make a class book or chart about the holidays that your class celebrates. Kind of like I did before, I stress, sometimes you're going to make a book, sometimes you're going to make a chart. You definitely want to vary how that text is going to look so that it's not always just a chart or always just a graphic organizer or something. Retelling of a favorite book, especially since I know you're reading a lot of good Christmas books around this time of year. It might be fun to rewrite, either retell it just with a simple beginning page, middle page, end page, or even make your own story that's kind of a spinoff, depending on what your kids are ready for. Any interactive or shared writing experience you desire. So just kind of anything. This one's coming up. I forget if I click on it, it moves. This is from week 17. So create a class big book that tells a story about your class holiday party. So once you've had the holiday party, might be something fun to write about, especially if anything crazy happens. Hopefully for none of you, nothing too crazy occurs. Create a big book to tell a story similar to any book that you've already read. And then this is like the next week. I pulled these two because this is week 17. This one right here is week 18. I think it's important also to recognize you don't have to get through a whole full piece of text in 1 week. If it takes you 2 or 3 weeks or the length of a unit of study to get through creating whatever that piece of text is, it's totally okay. Alrighty. So that's really most of what I had today. I just wanted to encourage you guys, if you don't use much interactive writing, there's so much you can teach with it. We could probably spend a whole time just talking about the different things that you could teach through the interactive writing process. I encourage you to be thoughtful about what you teach and what you review. That's why sometimes actually planning it versus just knowing, okay, I know we're going to make a recipe book. Putting some time in planning really will help you to make sure that you cover and address what's appropriate for your kids and not a million things, which is what I have a tendency to do, is try to teach everything all at once. So if I plan an interactive writing lesson, I'm more likely to teach just the pieces that I want to focus on. All right, so questions about things coming up. I'm looking back at where it fits into your day. Part of your morning meetings, science and social studies. All right, so worm habitats. Oh my goodness. So if you'll keep an eye on the white space, let me actually navigate over there for us. You will see where it tells you you need to still have, hopefully, your big pickle jars that you built your habitat in. And then we will hand deliver to you the bedding, the soil, and the sand, as well as your worms. We are checking into getting you a little larger worms than we had last year. I'm not sure yet exactly what that will look like, but all right, let me take you through to here. Pre-K. Okay, so third reporting period, I believe it's around 22. Nope. 20. Okay, so they'll be delivered week 21 is where they, hopefully, that's our goal. That's what's on the calendar right now. But your worms and your dirt should be delivered sometime in the week of week 21, which is February 4th through 8th. And then butterflies, you do not have to send off for butterflies. We've got something that we're going to do for that, but it should be delivered to you somewhere around week 22. They should be delivered in week 22 or 23. The goal was to be finished with butterflies and for your with your worms and your butterflies so that they could actually, you could observe them for all the way from caterpillar to butterfly before you leave for spring break. So that at least gives you kind of those dates of what's coming up. Something I will call your attention to, if you haven't had a chance or haven't noticed, I've tried to kind of change, this is kind of what we refer to as the white space. Please look in here. I've tried to try to change it up. I know some weeks some of the spots will be the same, but we're trying to offer you kind of what's new, looking forward. And then there's always some spaces for collaboration. Like this one right here is a Google form. If you'll go to it and let me know, there's some places where you can say, hey, I'd love to talk about this in a Zoom session, or could we do this over Zoom? I'd love to hear your ideas. Let me look at a couple more. I don't think there's much of anything else. I'm trying to include some tips and tools with technology, some things like that. So, all right, any other questions about things we have coming up or moving forward? No one? Anyone? All right, so I want you to stop before we leave. I would love for you to think for just a minute. What is one way you could improve your current practice with interactive or shared writing? So if you'll just respond in the comments, what's one thing you could do that might make your practice better? And it doesn't even have to be something we've talked about today. Just as you sit and reflect and think about your teaching, your planning for interactive writing, the text that you create, those kind of things. What's one way that you might improve that process? For me, mine would often be cover only what needs to be covered and not try to teach 20 different things within the lesson. I'd love to hear from everybody. What's one thing? Maybe it's just to do interactive writing. Maybe it's to do more with it. Say the letters the student writes it. Extend the writing or do more with it afterwards. Good idea. Okay. All right, I know a few of you are still responding. More class books. Class books are always fantastic. It gives them something that they can read and access when they're over in stations. Yeah. Trying the whiteboards in their laps while they're writing to try to keep them engaged. Cool. Awesome. All right. Great ideas. So if you've responded, we're finished for today. We're going to finish up a little bit early. Thank you for joining me. Like I said, when you get to that week 18 Google form, I'd love to hear from you on what are the things you want to cover in a Zoom session. I think that's it. Thank you guys for joining us. We're going to end early so that you don't have to stay till 4:30 because I'm sure you have nothing else to do. You guys have a very Merry Christmas, and I look forward to seeing you guys at our next one. Our next one, I don't even have the date in my head right now, but it will be posted in the white space. Okay? All right. I think it's in February.
Thank you.
All right. Have a
Merry
good Christmas. Thanks, guys. You too.
Bye.
Bye.